Mark sat in the cockpit of his small ship, staring at the black void around him. He had traveled for weeks, moving farther from the safe routes of human space. His mission was simple: explore, record, and report. Yet as the stars passed outside his window, he could not shake the feeling that something unusual was waiting for him out there. The ship's computer beeped. A signal appeared on the scanner, faint but steady. Mark leaned forward, narrowing his eyes. It was not a natural reading. It came from a location close to a dark world, one with no sun nearby, floating like a shadow in space. Few explorers would dare to land there, but Mark was curious. He had always believed that true discovery came from risks. He guided the ship toward the strange planet. As he entered the thin atmosphere, the scanners showed large structures on the surface. They were tall and sharp, like spires reaching to the sky. Ruins, maybe. Or perhaps something still alive. The ship touched down on hard ground. Dust rose around the landing gear. Mark wore his explorer suit, checked his oxygen, and opened the hatch. The air outside was cold and thin. The sky was black, dotted only with distant stars. He could see the ruins up close now. They were built of dark stone, carved with symbols he did not understand. Mark's boots crunched as he walked forward. Every step echoed in the silence. His helmet light revealed walls covered with strange marks. They told stories, but he had no way of reading them. Still, he felt eyes on him. He stopped, scanning the shadows. Nothing moved, yet the air carried a heavy presence. Then, a sound came. A deep hum, like the heartbeat of the ruins themselves. Mark turned quickly, and from the darkness between two spires, a figure emerged. She was tall, armored from head to toe in plates that shone like black glass. Her eyes glowed faint red, bright even in the night. Around her, several smaller figures appeared, also armored but less grand. They moved like soldiers, forming a half-circle around Mark. Mark froze, raising his hands slowly. He knew first contact could go many ways. He forced himself to speak calmly. "I come in peace. I am only exploring." The tall armored figure stepped closer. Her voice was deep, steady, and carried a tone of command. "You are human." It was not a question. It was a statement. Mark's heart pounded. She spoke his language, or at least some translation was reaching him. He nodded. "Yes. Human. I am Mark." The figure removed her helmet. Underneath was a face pale as moonlight, with sharp features and eyes that glowed faintly. She looked both regal and dangerous, like a queen carved from shadow. Her soldiers lowered their heads slightly when she revealed her face. Clearly, she was their leader. Mark swallowed. He did not know what to say. Her gaze was fixed on him, piercing and unblinking. He tried to calm himself with humor, a habit he had since youth. Words slipped from his mouth before he could think. "I want you," he said with a nervous smile, hoping to break the tension. The silence that followed was heavy. The soldiers stiffened, their armor rattling. Mark's smile vanished. He realized too late that he might have said something wrong. The queen's eyes narrowed, but instead of anger, something else appeared in her expression. Interest. She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You want me," she repeated slowly, as if testing the words. Mark stammered. I meant. It was a joke." But the queen did not laugh. Instead, she raised her hand. Her soldiers stepped back, creating space. She began to unfasten parts of her dark armor. One piece slid off, then another, revealing a form beneath that still carried strength but was no longer hidden by heavy plating. Mark's eyes widened. He did not understand what was happening, but he felt as if he had triggered some ritual or tradition he knew nothing about. The Queen's voice was calm, but it carried weight. Among my people, words have power. To say what you said is not small. It is a call of loyalty. It is a claim of bond. Do you know what you have spoken, human? Mark's throat went dry. He shook his head slowly. No, I did not know. It was only words. Her soldiers exchanged glances, their glowing eyes shifting between him and their queen. The air was filled with tension, but the queen seemed more curious than hostile. She stepped closer, so close that Mark could see faint patterns on her pale skin, lines that glowed softly like living veins of light. Then you have spoken without knowing. Still, words cannot be taken back. You stand before me, and now the court will hear of this. Mark blinked. The court. The Queen nodded once. Yes. If you wish to live, you will come with me. Your joke has become a challenge, human. And challenges have meaning. Mark's mind raced. He wanted to protest, to explain, but the soldiers surrounded him again. Their weapons hummed with energy, but they did not strike. They only waited for him to follow. He sighed under his helmet. His first meeting with alien life had already turned into something far more complicated than he imagined. As he was led through the towering ruins toward a gate of dark stone, Mark thought to himself, next time, I should keep my jokes to myself. But part of him, deep inside, felt a spark of wonder. He had not only met an alien queen but also stepped into a story far greater than any report he planned to send. The night sky above remained silent, the stars watching as the human and the queen walked together into the unknown halls of her world. The gates of black stone opened with a heavy sound as the queen led Mark inside. The soldiers followed in silence, their armor shining faintly in the dim light of strange crystals fixed into the walls. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, and Mark felt as if the ruins were not ruins at all, but a living palace carved into the mountain. Mark tried to keep calm. Every step made him wonder if he had walked into a trap. The queen's presence was powerful. Even without armor, she moved with steady grace, as though every part of the hall belonged to her. Her soldiers did not speak, but their glowing eyes never left him. Finally, they entered a wide chamber lit by tall flames that burned with blue fire. The walls were covered with carvings and flowing designs that told stories of battles and thrones. At the center of the chamber stood a long platform, with seats rising on both sides like a court. Mark realized this was a place where judgments were made. The queen walked to the center and turned to face him. Her voice echoed through the chamber. Human, your words carry weight. You spoke them before my soldiers, and now the court will hear them as truth. You called me to bond, and such a call cannot be ignored. Mark raised his hands. Wait. It was not serious. I did not know what it meant. I said it as a joke, a nervous thing. Where I come from, it is not a call to bond. It is just words to lighten a moment. The queen studied him. Her pale face did not change, but her eyes glowed brighter. In my world, no words are empty. If you speak, you must mean. If you do not mean, then you must face trial to prove your worth. The soldiers around the chamber let out a soft hum, like agreement. Mark looked around, his heart racing. He was alone among them, and he could not simply walk away. He understood now, he had stepped into their traditions, and they would not allow him to escape without showing strength. The queen lifted her hand. A soldier stepped forward, carrying a long staff made of dark metal. The end of the staff glowed with sharp light. The soldier placed it before the queen and bowed. She touched it once, and the glow spread brighter. "This," she said, "is the staff of vow. When a word is spoken, the one who spoke must stand in trial before the court. If you prove your spirit, then your word is accepted as true. If you fail, then your word is judged false, and your life is forfeit. This is the way of my people." Mark's mouth went dry. He wanted to explain again, but he could see from the soldiers' faces that no excuse would save him. To them, his words had already shaped his fate. The only path forward was through this trial. He drew a deep breath. "If this is the way, then I will face it. But I do not know your rules. How can I pass a trial I do not understand?" The queen's eyes softened for the first time, though only slightly. "You are human. You are not of my world. The court will not demand of you what you cannot give. You will face 3 tests, of strength, of mind, and of spirit. If you endure, your word will be honored. If you fall, your word will be ashes." The chamber filled with low murmurs. The soldiers seemed eager. Mark could feel their eyes on him like weight. He clenched his fists, steadying himself. "Then I will try." The queen stepped closer, her pale light brushing against his visor. "You must understand, human. This is not a small thing. Many who have stood where you stand have failed. Yet you came to me with no fear, and your words were bold. Perhaps your spirit is stronger than it seems." Mark nodded, though inside he was not so sure. He had no weapons, no training for alien customs, only his own mind and the will to survive. But he had learned in his travels that courage was not the absence of fear, but the act of walking forward despite it. The queen turned to her soldiers. "Prepare the court. At dawn, the human will face the first test." The soldiers struck their staffs against the floor in agreement. The sound echoed like thunder. 2 guards approached Mark and motioned for him to follow. They led him through a side passage into a smaller chamber. It was bare except for a stone bench and a glowing crystal in the wall that gave faint light. The door closed behind him with a heavy sound, locking him inside. Mark sat down, resting his head in his hands. He thought about the chain of events. One joke. One careless moment. Now his life was tied to alien law he barely understood. He wondered if this was how humanity would first be remembered, through his clumsy mistake. Yet part of him also felt something else. A spark of excitement. These people were not mindless creatures or simple enemies. They had rules, culture, meaning behind every act. They respected strength of will, not just power of weapon. And somehow, he had stepped into their story. Hours passed in silence. Mark thought about home, about the stars, about why he had chosen this path of exploration. He remembered the voices of friends telling him to stay in safe space, and he smiled faintly. "Safe space never discovers anything," he whispered. The crystal dimmed and then grew brighter again. The door opened, and the queen herself entered, her armor now fully removed. She wore a robe of dark cloth that shimmered like night sky. She looked less like a warrior now and more like a ruler of old. She stood before him and spoke softly. "Human, I gave the order for trial, but I came here to see what you are before it begins. Tell me, why did you come to this world? What do humans seek in the dark?" Mark looked at her, surprised by the question. He answered honestly. "We seek knowledge. We seek to understand what is out there. Some say it is for power, but for me, it is because I want to know what lives in the stars. I want to see if we are alone or if we can learn from others. I came here because I believe there is always more than what we know. The queen's eyes glowed faintly, softer than before. She studied him in silence for a long time, then finally spoke. Perhaps your words were not empty after all. Perhaps fate brought you here for a reason. She turned and walked to the door. Rest, human. At dawn, we will see if your spirit is strong enough to carry the weight of your words. The door closed again, leaving Mark alone with his thoughts. He lay back on the cold stone, staring at the dim crystal above. Sleep would not come easily, but he knew he needed his strength. Tomorrow, the trials would begin. The crystal light in the small chamber grew brighter, marking the start of a new cycle. Mark rose from the stone bench, his body stiff from little rest. He felt the weight of what was ahead. Today he would stand before an alien court, judged not for what he had done, but for words he had spoken without thought. The heavy door opened, and 2 guards entered. Their armor reflected the pale glow of the crystals, their movements silent and exact. Without speaking, they gestured for Mark to follow. He walked between them through long halls carved from dark stone. Strange symbols covered the walls, glowing faintly as if alive. The air was cold, carrying a smell like metal and dust. Mark's boots echoed against the stone floor, each step bringing him closer to the unknown. At last, they entered the great hall. Mark stopped for a moment, staring. It was far larger than the chamber he had seen before. Tall pillars reached to the ceiling, carved with designs of winged figures and battle scenes. Rows of armored figures stood along the sides, silent but watchful. At the far end, a raised throne of black crystal glowed faintly, and upon it sat the queen, Vera. She no longer wore heavy armor but a robe that shimmered like night, lined with silver threads that caught the light of the crystals. Her glowing eyes fixed on Mark as he was led to the center of the hall. A voice rang out, deep and commanding, though it was not the queen's. An elder figure in dark robes stepped forward, holding a staff of black iron. The human has spoken words of vow. By our law, he must face trial before the court. Let his spirit be tested. The hall filled with a low hum as the gathered warriors tapped their staffs against the ground. The sound rolled like thunder. Mark's heart pounded, but he kept his head high. He told himself that fear would only weaken him. If he wanted to survive, he had to show them that humans could stand strong. The elder spoke again. 3 tests will decide his fate. Strength, mind, and spirit. If he proves worthy, his words will stand. If he fails, his life ends here. Mark swallowed hard. The soldier's glowing eyes watched him with hunger for the trial. He stood in silence, waiting for what would come first. The queen lifted her hand, and the hall grew silent. Her voice carried across the chamber. The human spoke boldly. He claimed me with words he did not understand. Yet he has shown no fear in following me to this place. For that, he will be judged fairly. Let the first test begin. The floor of the hall shifted. Stones moved aside, revealing a wide circle marked with glowing lines. The space hummed with energy. Mark was guided to stand inside it. Across from him, a tall armored warrior stepped forward. His armor was heavier than the others, his weapon a long spear that crackled with light. The elder raised his staff. The test of strength is simple. Stand against the warrior. Do not yield, do not flee. Show that you have spirit enough to face what stands before you. Mark's throat went dry. He had no weapon, no armor, only his explorer suit. His mind raced. He could not fight like them, but he remembered what the queen had said, strength was not only power of body but also spirit. He would need to use his mind if he hoped to survive. The warrior raised his spear, and the trial began. Mark dodged to the side as the spear struck the ground where he had stood a moment before. Sparks flew. The warrior moved fast for his size, pressing the attack. Mark barely avoided the next strike, rolling across the glowing floor. He felt the heat of energy graze his arm but kept moving. He knew he could not win by matching strength. He needed another way. His eyes scanned the warrior's armor. Heavy, layered, and glowing with power but also slowing the man down. Mark focused on the joints, the weaker points where plates overlapped. The warrior lunged again. This time, instead of dodging back, Mark stepped closer, inside the reach of the spear. The sudden move surprised the warrior. Mark slammed his hand against the side joint of the armor, throwing his weight against it. The warrior stumbled, unbalanced for the first time. The court murmured in surprise. Mark saw his chance. He grabbed a piece of broken stone from the floor and struck at the spear's shaft. The weapon bent slightly, not broken but weaker. He backed away, breathing hard. The warrior roared and charged, but now his movements were slower, his stance less sure. Mark stayed light on his feet, dodging again and again. At last, when the warrior stumbled from his own weight, Mark leaped forward and pressed the broken stone against the glowing lines on the warrior's chest plate. It was not a killing blow, but a mark of victory. The court fell silent. The elder raised his staff. Enough. The human has stood his ground. The test of strength is complete. The warrior stepped back, lowering his spear. Though his face was hidden, Mark could sense respect in the way he bowed slightly before leaving the circle. Mark's chest heaved with breath, sweat dampening his brow. He had survived the first test, but only barely. The Queen's voice rose again, calm yet strong. You see, he does not match our power, but he does not yield. His strength is his will and his mind. This is the mark of one who should not be ignored. The soldiers around the hall struck their staffs against the floor in a rhythm that sounded like reluctant approval. The elder lifted his staff once more. The first test is passed. Prepare for the second. The test of mind will decide if the human has wisdom as well as will. Mark stepped back from the circle, his legs still weak but his spirit stronger than before. He had shown them he could stand, even against impossible odds. Now he would face the next trial. He looked up at the Queen. Her glowing eyes were still fixed on him, but for the first time, he thought he saw something behind them: interest, and perhaps the beginning of respect. Mark knew the hardest part was still ahead. Strength had been about survival. The test of mind would demand something else, and he would have to rely only on his wit to win. The Queen's words echoed in the hall. Let him rest for a moment, for the true test is not of body but of thought. Soon the court will see if the human's mind is sharp enough to hold the weight of his vow. The torches of blue flame flickered, and the hum of the stone circle faded. The trial of mind was waiting, and Mark prepared himself for whatever puzzle or challenge this alien court would set before him. The circle of glowing stone dimmed after the first trial. The warrior who had faced Mark was gone, and the hall grew quiet once more. Mark stood in the center, his chest still rising and falling with heavy breath. His arms trembled with tiredness, but he forced himself to remain tall. He knew the eyes of the court were on him. The elder raised his staff. The human has shown strength of will against a warrior. Now he will face the second trial. The test of mind. Let the court prepare. A low hum filled the chamber. The glowing lines of the floor shifted, forming new patterns. The circle changed into a large square divided into many smaller shapes. Strange runes lit up on the ground, each shining in different colors. Two soldiers brought forward a table made of dark crystal. On it rested objects that looked like pieces of carved stone. They were shaped into cubes, pyramids, and spheres, each etched with alien markings. The elder pointed to the table. The trial of mind is the puzzle of order. The shapes must be placed on the glowing floor in the right path. A wrong choice will bring pain. A correct path will open the way. Only one who sees with wisdom can pass. Mark stepped closer, staring at the pieces. He bent down and touched one of the glowing squares on the floor. At once, it flashed brighter, and a deep vibration shook the chamber. The elder lifted his staff quickly. "Be careful, human. This is not a game. Choose with thought." Mark straightened, his mind racing. He had no guide, no instructions, only strange symbols and shapes. Yet he knew puzzles well. He remembered his training, the long hours spent studying alien languages, the patterns of numbers, the logic of machines. He told himself that this was the same. A test of patterns. He picked up one of the cubes. It was heavy and cool to the touch. The markings on its sides reminded him of the runes glowing on the floor. He studied the lines, searching for a match. One square on the floor shone with the same symbol. Mark placed the cube there carefully. At once, the square glowed brighter, and the vibration turned smooth, almost like music. The court murmured. The first move was correct. Encouraged, Mark studied the rest of the pieces. He tried a pyramid next, but when he placed it on a square, the glow flared red, and a sharp shock passed through his hand. He pulled back with a hiss of pain. The court laughed softly, a sound like dark amusement. Mark gritted his teeth. He forced himself to stay calm. "Think," he whispered to himself. "Don't rush." He picked up the pyramid again and compared it more carefully to the runes. He saw now that the sides of the pyramid connected to 3 different symbols. He searched the floor until he found a square with the same 3 marks joined together. When he placed it there, the glow turned steady blue. Correct. Piece by piece, he worked. The puzzle was complex, each shape requiring focus and patience. He made mistakes, feeling the sting of shocks more than once, but he also saw patterns others might miss. Some runes repeated, forming chains. Some pieces connected not by shape but by sequence. The court grew silent as the puzzle neared its end. Mark placed the last piece, a smooth sphere covered in winding lines, onto the final glowing square. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire floor lit up with golden light. The patterns connected into one great design that shone like a star. The soldiers struck their staffs against the ground in rhythm, not with mockery now, but with respect. The elder's voice carried across the hall. The human has completed the puzzle of order. The trial of mind is past. Mark let out a long breath. His hands still tingled from the shocks, but his heart lifted. He had done it. Not by strength, but by thought. He looked up at the queen on her throne. Her glowing eyes were fixed on him. She did not smile, but there was a change in her expression, a softness he had not seen before. She spoke with steady voice. "You see, my court. The human is not empty of mind. He sees patterns where others see confusion. He stands not only with will, but also with wisdom." The soldiers murmured in agreement. Mark stood straighter, feeling the shift in the air. They no longer saw him as a weak outsider. He was becoming something else, someone who could stand in their court with honor. But he knew the trials were not finished. The elder raised his staff again. 2 trials are past. 1 remains. The trial of spirit. Strength and wisdom are not enough. The human must show the heart that guides him. Only then will his vow be judged. The hall darkened as the glowing lines on the floor faded. The torches of blue flame flickered low. The chamber seemed heavier, filled with unseen weight. Mark felt a chill run through him. The queen rose from her throne and stepped forward. Her robe shimmered like the night sky, and her pale face glowed faintly in the dim light. She walked until she stood only a few steps away from Mark. "The trial of spirit is not about puzzles or weapons," she said. "It is about truth. You will face what lies within you. Fear, doubt, hope, loyalty. The spirit must be stronger than lies, or it will break." Mark swallowed, his mouth dry. He thought of all he had faced already, and yet this sounded even harder. Fighting he could understand. Solving puzzles he could manage. But facing his own spirit before a court of strangers, that was something he had never imagined. The queen's eyes glowed brighter. "At the next cycle, the trial of spirit will begin. Until then, you will rest. Prepare yourself, human, for this is the trial that decides all." The elder struck his staff against the floor, and the sound echoed like thunder. The soldiers stepped back in silence. 2 guards approached and led Mark once more through the halls. His body was tired, his mind heavy, but his heart carried a strange fire. He had survived 2 trials. The court was beginning to respect him. And though he had spoken his vow as a joke, he now felt that perhaps it carried meaning after all. When they left him in his chamber, he sat on the stone bench and stared at the glowing crystal above. He thought of Earth, of the people waiting far away who had no idea what he faced here. He thought of the queen, her eyes like twin stars in the dark. And he thought of the next trial, the one that would test his very spirit. Mark clenched his fists. "I have come this far. I will not fall now." The chamber grew quiet, but his resolve burned brighter than the crystal light. The dawn of the final trial was coming, and with it, the decision that would bind his fate to the queen and her people forever. Mark woke before dawn. The crystal above his stone bench glowed faintly, signaling the start of a new day. His body ached from the trials of strength and mind, but his thoughts were focused. Today he would face the trial of spirit, the final challenge that could decide his fate. As he rose, the door opened silently. One of the queen's soldiers entered. "You will be brought to the hall shortly," the soldier said. "The court awaits." Mark nodded. He followed the soldier through twisting halls. Every step echoed in the quiet corridors. The closer he came to the main hall, the heavier the air seemed. It was not cold, but full of tension, as if the stones themselves were aware of the moment to come. When he entered the hall, he immediately noticed a new presence. A tall figure in black armor stood among the soldiers, his stance rigid and commanding. His eyes glowed faintly green. Mark sensed hostility in the air. The queen's voice carried over the hall. "This human stands for trial of spirit. Let all witnesses observe." The green-eyed figure stepped forward. "He is not worthy," he said, his voice echoing in the chamber. "No human could claim your favor. It is wrong to accept him among us." The court murmured. The soldiers tapped their staffs against the floor, a sound that spoke of tension and judgment. Mark's heart raced. This was a challenge he had not anticipated. The green-eyed alien lord, clearly one of the queen's rivals, seemed intent on making him fail. Mark swallowed hard. He could not fight this enemy with weapons, and he had no choice but to face the challenge with courage. He raised his hands slightly. "I do not seek favor," he said calmly. "I only wish to stand before you honestly, as I have done from the start." The queen observed silently, her glowing eyes fixed on him. The rival lord stepped closer, his armor gleaming with dark energy. "Honesty is not enough," he said. "Spirit is shown through action. I will test the human myself." Before Mark could respond, the lord raised his hands, and the floor around him shimmered. The glowing tiles shifted, forming a path of challenges designed to trap and confuse. Each step carried danger. Mark realized that this trial would not only test his spirit, but his courage and decision-making under pressure. He took a deep breath. "I will not run," he whispered to himself. He stepped forward. The path was difficult. Tiles shifted beneath his feet. Some sank slightly, threatening to throw him off balance. Others lit up with patterns that seemed meant to distract. Mark focused on his instincts. He moved carefully, relying on the lessons from his first trials. He could not let fear control him. Halfway through the path, a shadowy figure appeared. It was not solid but a vision, designed to test his mind and heart. Mark saw his fears, images of failure, of being crushed under the queen's judgment, of his world rejecting him. He shook his head. "This is not real," he said firmly. "I control my path." The vision flickered and vanished. Mark's steps became more confident. He could feel the eyes of the court on him, but he ignored them, focusing only on the path ahead. Then the rival lord acted. He sent energy through the floor, creating obstacles that required quick thinking and bravery. Tiles rose like walls, sparks flew from others, and glowing lines formed confusing patterns. Mark dodged, jumped, and ran with careful precision. Each action tested not only his body but his decision-making and calmness under pressure. The queen watched silently, her glowing eyes calm but observant. She did not intervene. This trial was for the human to prove himself to the court, and even to her rival. Finally, Mark reached the end of the path. The final tile glowed brighter than the others. He stepped on it, and a wave of warmth spread through the hall. The rival lord's expression shifted, from anger to reluctant respect. The elder raised his staff. The human has faced not only the trial of spirit but also the challenge of opposition. His courage, honesty, and resolve have brought him through. The queen rose from her throne. She moved down the steps and stood before Mark. "You have faced your fears, your doubts, and the challenges set by those who would see you fail. Your spirit has proven itself. The court has witnessed your worth." Mark lowered his head slightly, still breathing hard. He felt relief, but also a strange pride. He had entered this alien court as a stranger, a human who knew nothing of their ways, and now he had stood tall against impossible odds. The rival lord stepped forward. His green eyes met Mark's. He lowered his head slightly in acknowledgement. It was a small gesture, but it carried meaning. Even in alien customs, respect had been earned. The queen's voice rang out across the chamber. "Let it be known that the human has passed all trials." His words, though spoken as a jest, have become a testament to his courage and mind. From this moment, his vow stands. The court struck their staffs against the floor in unison, the sound rolling like a wave through the hall. The soldiers around the edges relaxed, some nodding toward Mark. He felt a strange sense of belonging, though he was still a human among a people who had never known humans before. The queen stepped closer. "Your trials have ended, human. You have shown that you can face strength, mind, and spirit. You have earned your place in this court, and perhaps more." Mark nodded. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only tried to be true to myself. I did not know what my words would mean, but I have learned the value of courage and thought in ways I never imagined. The Queen's eyes softened. You have learned well. Perhaps your presence here will be remembered for what it represents. Not only the courage of one human but the potential of your kind. Mark looked around the hall, taking in the towering pillars, the glowing crystals, and the court that had judged him. He realized that he had entered a new world, not as a visitor, but as someone who had proven he could stand among them. The rival lord stepped back, still tense but no longer hostile. Mark understood that his journey had changed more than just himself. He had shown that humans, even in a world far from Earth, could meet the challenges of alien ways with courage, wisdom, and heart. The Queen turned toward the hall. Let all witnesses know that today marks a new beginning. Not only for the human but for those who would see humans as weak. Today we have seen the strength of mind and spirit. The human has earned his place. Mark felt a lightness in his chest. His trials were over, and he had survived. More than survival, he had earned respect in a world that was not his own. The elder lowered his staff. The court is dismissed. The human may rest. His spirit has been tested, and his worth is proven. Mark bowed to the Queen. She returned the gesture, small but meaningful. He had not only passed the trials, but he had also taken a step into the trust of a people unlike any he had known. As the hall emptied, Mark walked alongside the Queen's soldiers, feeling a new confidence in his steps. The trials had been harsh, but they had revealed something deeper: his own strength, the value of human thought, and the courage to face the unknown. And though the rival lord still watched from the shadows, Mark knew that he had won something far greater than approval. He had begun a journey that could change the relationship between his kind and hers forever. The hall was quiet now, filled only with the soft hum of glowing crystals and the occasional clank of armor as soldiers moved through the corridors. Mark walked alongside the Queen, his heart still racing from the trials he had survived. He felt exhausted, but also strangely alive. He had passed strength, mind, and spirit, and had gained the respect of an alien court unlike any human had ever seen. The Queen's eyes, glowing softly, followed him. You have shown courage beyond your kind's reputation, she said. Few humans could endure what you have faced. Even now, I am uncertain if your arrival was chance or destiny. Mark smiled faintly, feeling the weight of her words. I do not know about destiny, Your Majesty. I only know I acted as best I could. I never thought my words could carry such meaning. She studied him silently for a moment, then turned and gestured for him to follow. Rest is not for long. You will stay near me. The court wishes to observe the human, and I wish to ensure he remains safe. They walked through long corridors lined with glowing crystals, passing chambers that Mark could not name or imagine. Despite the beauty of the halls, he sensed unease. Something in the air had shifted. He could feel tension among the soldiers, their quiet movements sharper, more alert. Suddenly, a loud alarm rang through the hall. Red lights flashed across the walls. Soldiers shouted commands in their language, and Mark caught only a few words he could understand: attack and intruder. Before he could ask, the Queen spun to face him. Stay close, she ordered. They have sent forces into the palace. It is an attempt to seize power while the court was distracted by your trials. Mark's mind raced. He had seen the rival lord before, but he had not expected this level of open conflict. He followed the Queen through the corridors as soldiers hurried to defend the gates. Explosions of energy lit the halls, throwing shadows across the walls. Suddenly, a group of armored figures rushed toward them, weapons glowing bright. Mark instinctively moved to intercept, but the queen held up a hand. "Watch and learn," she said, moving with fluid precision. She struck with speed and accuracy, her movements a mixture of strength and grace. Energy arcs flared from her hands and weapons, sending attackers flying back. Mark could see now why her soldiers obeyed without question. She was more than a ruler, she was a force of nature. Yet one attacker slipped past her defenses. He aimed directly at the queen with a weapon that glowed like liquid fire. Mark reacted without thinking. He threw himself in front of her, grabbing the weapon as it struck. Sparks flew, and the energy seared through his suit, but he held on. The queen's eyes widened, not in anger but in recognition. "Human," she said sharply, "hold steady." Mark gritted his teeth and did not let go. He could feel the energy trying to push him backward, but he anchored himself with all his strength. The queen moved beside him, her hands guiding the weapon's energy away from her. Together, they redirected the attack, sending it harmlessly into the floor. The hall fell silent for a moment. Soldiers around them stared, clearly astonished. Mark was breathing hard, his body trembling from the effort, but he had saved the queen. She looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting both surprise and something deeper. "You acted without hesitation," she said softly. "Few would risk themselves for me, especially a human who knows little of our ways. You have my trust, Mark, and perhaps more than that." Mark nodded, still trying to catch his breath. I could not let harm come to you. Not after everything." The queen inclined her head slightly. "Then we fight together," she said. "We are stronger as allies." The remaining attackers, now regrouping, were met by the combined force of the queen and her soldiers, with Mark moving beside them when he could. He did not have the skill of their warriors, but his timing, his instincts, and his courage allowed him to assist in ways they did not expect. He blocked paths, distracted attackers, and helped redirect energy flows. Slowly, the tide turned. The intruders fell back, retreating from the overwhelming force of the palace defenders. The rival lord was nowhere in sight, but Mark understood that this was only a temporary pause. When the hall finally quieted, the queen turned to face him. "You have done more than survive trials. You have proven your spirit in battle, and in doing so, you have shown loyalty, courage, and determination." Mark felt a mix of exhaustion and pride. He had entered this palace as a stranger and had survived impossible trials. He had faced a direct threat to the queen and acted without hesitation. He was no longer simply a human in a foreign court. He was someone the queen could rely on. The queen's eyes softened, her glow steady. "Few humans have walked this path. Even fewer would act as you did. Know that your presence here is no longer trivial. You have become a part of our history." Mark shook his head slightly, still catching his breath. "I never expected this. I only tried to do what I thought was right." She smiled faintly, a small curve of her lips that seemed almost human. "Sometimes, that is enough. Actions speak louder than words, and you have spoken volumes with yours." The soldiers around them tapped their staffs in rhythm, a gesture of approval and respect. Mark noticed even the rival lord had appeared at the edge of the hall, observing quietly, his expression unreadable. Even he could not deny Mark's actions. The queen's voice echoed again. "Let it be known, human, that you have earned a place beside me. Today, you have not only passed trials but have shown courage in the face of real danger. The bond formed by your actions cannot be ignored." Mark looked around the hall. For the first time, he felt a sense of belonging in this alien world. He was far from Earth, yet he had proven himself in ways no one might have expected. The Queen inclined her head once more. Rest now, Mark. The court will record today as a turning point. You have shown that humans can stand not only in thought and spirit but also in action. And perhaps, together, we can face what comes next in this galaxy. Mark nodded, a faint smile on his face. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and something more, something he could not yet name but felt deeply. As he was led to a chamber near the Queen's own quarters, he realized that his journey had changed. He was no longer merely a human explorer. He was now part of an alien court, a trusted ally of the Queen, and someone who had proven that courage and loyalty could bridge worlds. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the exhaustion of the day, but also the spark of new possibilities. The trials were behind him, the Queen's trust was earned, and the galaxy stretched out beyond him, full of mysteries yet to explore. The night in the palace was calm. The blue flames along the corridors flickered softly, casting shadows that danced like silent guardians. Mark walked beside the Queen, Vera, feeling the weight of the past trials settle into a strange sense of accomplishment. For the first time, he felt that he belonged, not just as a visitor, but as someone who had earned a place in this alien world. They reached a quiet chamber filled with glowing crystals that gave off a gentle warmth. The Queen gestured for Mark to sit. "You have endured what few humans could even imagine," she said, her glowing eyes soft yet intense. "Strength, mind, spirit, and courage in battle. You have proven yourself not by words alone, but by action. And for that, you have my respect." Mark took a seat, exhausted but attentive. He looked at the Queen and nodded. "I did what I thought was right. I never expected my words to have meaning, or that they would lead to all this." Vera's eyes glimmered with a faint smile. "Words have power, Mark. Even careless words can shape destiny. But you showed that action and heart are stronger than words alone. That is why the court has accepted you. That is why I trust you." Mark felt a warmth in his chest he had never known before. It was not just pride. It was a connection, a bond that had formed through trials, danger, and courage. He realized that in this alien world, respect and trust were earned, and he had earned both. The Queen motioned toward the glowing window overlooking the night sky. Stars sparkled like diamonds on black silk. "Look at the galaxy, human. So vast, so unknown. So many worlds, so many stories. And yet, you have stepped into ours and left your mark." Mark followed her gaze. "It is beautiful. And frightening. But I think I understand something now. Strength is not only about fighting. It is about courage, choices, and loyalty. I have learned that here." Vera stepped closer, her presence commanding yet gentle. "And that is why you will remain here, at least for now. Your presence is valuable. Not just to me, but to our people. You have proven that humans can be allies, and that knowledge and heart can cross the boundaries between worlds." Mark swallowed, feeling a mix of humility and pride. "I never thought I would be more than a visitor, but you have shown me that there is more I can do. I will do my best to live up to that trust." The Queen's gaze softened. "That is all anyone can ask. Trust is earned in action, and today you have done so. You have shown courage when tested, intelligence when challenged, and loyalty when it mattered most." Outside, the first light of dawn began to touch the horizon of the dark world. The glowing crystals in the chamber seemed to mirror the rising light, filling the room with a serene glow. Mark felt hope, something he had not felt since leaving Earth. Vera continued, "The court has acknowledged your deeds. The rival lord has been warned that you are under my protection. No harm will come to you while you are here, Mark. You have earned not just respect, but safety. Mark nodded, humbled by her words. I am grateful. And I will not forget this trust. For a long moment, they stood together in silence, looking out at the stars. Mark felt that the trials, the battles, and the puzzles had all led to this point not just survival, but understanding. He realized that courage could inspire, loyalty could bridge worlds, and that even a single human could make a difference in a universe so vast. The Queen turned to him, her expression serious. There is something you must know. The court may have accepted you, but the galaxy is full of challenges. There are forces that would not see this bond tolerated. You must remain vigilant. But know this, your courage has shown others that humans can be more than we expected. Your presence here changes the story of our people. Mark felt a surge of determination. I understand. I will do what I must to honor that trust. Not for reward, but because it is right. Vera's eyes softened, and she stepped closer, placing a hand on his shoulder. Then we are allies, Mark. Partners in facing what comes next. You have shown that heart and courage matter as much as strength and mind. That is why you will remain, and that is why the court will watch your story unfold. Mark looked at her, a quiet smile forming. I never expected my journey to take me here. I only know that I am ready for what comes next. And I am ready to stand with you. The Queen inclined her head slightly, the gesture formal yet warm. Then rest for now. The court and I will guide what comes next. You have earned your place here. Let the galaxy see that a human can walk among us with honor. Mark settled onto a bench near the window, letting the calm wash over him. He thought of Earth, of friends and family, and of the stars that stretched beyond. And yet, for the first time, he felt a sense of home in a world so far from home. Outside, the palace stirred as soldiers returned to their posts. The rival lord remained at the edges, watching, but now with caution rather than hostility. Mark realized that the trials, the battles, and the courage he had shown had not only earned respect, but had changed how humans would be seen by this alien people. The Queen spoke once more, softly, her voice carrying the weight of command and trust. You have been tested, Mark. You have faced what few could survive. And now you are ready for the days ahead. Remember what you have learned here. Courage, wisdom, and spirit can move mountains, even in a galaxy full of unknown dangers. Mark nodded. I will remember. And I will do my best, for you and for your people. The Queen's eyes glimmered one last time. Then let this day be the beginning. A new chapter for humans and for our people. Together, we will face the unknown, and together, we will prove that courage and heart can change the course of worlds. Mark looked out at the stars again. He felt a sense of purpose he had never known. The trials had been hard, the dangers real, and the challenges unlike anything he had faced. Yet he had survived, and in doing so, he had earned trust, respect, and a bond that bridged worlds. And in that moment, Mark understood that this was only the beginning of his story. He had walked into an alien world as a stranger, and now he would walk forward as a trusted ally, ready to face the galaxy and whatever it might hold, side by side with the Queen who had tested him, guided him, and come to trust him. The stars outside sparkled like promises in the dark, and Mark felt the thrill of new possibilities. For the first time in his life, he understood that courage, wisdom, and heart could carry him across worlds, and that one human could make a difference far beyond Earth.